So thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Virtual Presenter Showcase. It is the 9th of August, 2022. We expect a large crowd today, and we are going to get started a couple minutes after the hour to let everyone join us. For the attendees here, you are welcome to find the chat box and place in the chat box where you're zooming in from. Let's do that thing. Hopefully it's not annoying to you. Hopefully you haven't been attending too many Zoom presentations where they have that, but we are very happy to welcome folks from not quite all over the United States, but from many states indeed, and many different towns within those states. So please do let us know the town and state that you're zooming in from. Okay, well, we definitely see some folks from Illinois, Kansas, Kentucky, some more Illinois ones. Welcome, Jenny, good to see you. Michigan and New York and the Chicago suburbs and more Michigan and Colorado. Thank you so much for coming, Jan, good to see you. Thank you for coming, Lauren from New Jersey. It is great to share all kinds of history with all kinds of people. And so we're really happy that you're here. As I mentioned in the emails that I sent out a couple weeks ago, or in some people's cases, just a couple days ago, this is being recorded. And so if you have to step away because you're busy, whether you work in a museum or a library or anywhere else, I understand you're busy. So if you have to step away, don't worry, this is being recorded and you will be sent a recording of it in a couple days after I work all that out. So don't worry. And of course, you can send the recording to any colleagues that you have, which would be great to share all of this information with even more colleagues. And we've got folks from North Dakota and Iowa. Hello, Marlis, good to see you. Welcome everyone. We have even more participants and that'll be great. I hope everyone brought their beverage of choice. As you can see, I'm having my afternoon tea from a Hershey's mug. So I have to admit it's not hot cocoa, but it is wonderful, wonderful afternoon tea on a day like today. So thank you folks for joining us. And if you'd like to put in the chat box where you're zooming in from, that would be fantastic. Oh, and thanks, Jan. Yeah, it'd be great. It would be great if we could get together over a cup of tea. So, okay, we are going to get started in just about 2 more minutes. I'd like to allow everyone to join in the Zoom. And we all know it sometimes takes an extra couple minutes for everything to load. So we're going to get started in just another 2 minutes. We've got more folks from Illinois, from Hamilton and Lake Forest, and Pamela from New York, and Natalie's from North Riverside Public Library, Winfield, Danvers, Wheaton, Illinois. Let's see here, South Holland. Yep, that's another Illinois, and 2 from Winnetka. Excellent. Thank you, Jill and Molly. Always good to have folks coming from the same place. Donna, good to see you. And Twin Lakes, Wisconsin, and Quincy, Illinois. Fantastic. Oh, another Michigan. So I'd say that we got the Midwest represented pretty well. If you're not from the Midwest, you go ahead and put your info into the chat as well. We'd like to see where you're from. I know we have folks from all over. So thank you so much for being here. We've got a whole bunch of participants, and I'm so happy to see that. We are going to get started. And so for anyone who has any questions, as each speaker is talking, if I say something, if I share an idea and you have another question about that, feel free to put them into the chat. Now, I admit we might not stop and answer them right away, but feel free to put them into the chat, because then there'll be a record of it. And everyone is going to take some time once we're all done speaking to answer any questions that you have. So feel free to do that. We are going to get started because I don't want to take up everyone's afternoon. But welcome to my second virtual presenter showcase. I'm very happy about this. And today you're going to meet a total of 7 different presenters talking about the variety of historic talks and presentations that they can give, focused on not just American history, really all of history and all different decades of history, from the 18th century up until just honestly a couple decades ago could be considered history. And so you're going to have quite the variety. And I sincerely hope that you in your organization, library, museum, school, etc., can use one of these presentations in helping your customers. So a couple things. I'm going to take just a couple minutes to tell you about myself and what I offer. Just as a reminder that in a couple days, the recording of this, like I said, will be emailed to you, but it'll also be up on this website, historicvoices.info/virtual presenters showcase. That's where it's going to be. Give me a couple days to upload it. If you go there right now, you will actually see the showcase that I hosted last December with another handful of presenters who give a variety of virtual presentations. So if you did not attend the one in December, you are welcome to view the recording right there. So my name is Laura Keys. A lot of you have hosted me in the past, so thank you so much for coming back. For those of you who are new, this is me. I only rarely wear sunglasses with my 1892 ensemble, but when they are, they turn out really good for a photo. I give portrayals and illustrated lectures when I am not being a library director. That is my day job. I'm a library director in Central Illinois. And you'll hear me say a couple times throughout this showcase that actually gives me an advantage, because I am coming at this topic of presentations, or even virtual presentations, from 2 different perspectives. I am not only giving the presentations that I'll tell you about in a minute, but I'm also the person who hires people like me to give presentations. And so in a couple of instances, I'm able to answer some questions or give some tips because I'm able to look at this topic from 2 different perspectives. So my Facebook page right now, the only social media I'm on is Facebook, because sorry, don't have time for all the other social media. It is facebook.com/historic voices if you'd like to look me up there. On the Facebook page, I always list where I'm going to be presenting. So if you would like to look at one of my presentations before you choose to book me for your own organization, you are welcome to look on Facebook. I'm always going to have the links and the dates and the times and everything. Those are always listed there. And on my website, laurafkeys.com, I list the individual programs that that are offered to you, and I'll go over those in just a moment. So obviously, I offer virtual programs. That's what we're all focused on today. For some folks, I'm actually still getting requests from some organizations to pre-record them so that your audience, your customers, your patrons, your students, I know that we have some senior living facilities out there, some of your residents, so that they can have the option of watching them on demand for a certain length of time, perhaps a week. That's an option. And so you're welcome to talk to me about that. I do offer in-person programs, and that is, again, I'm located in Central Illinois. I'm willing to travel. Earlier this summer, I traveled to Northern New York State and I did a presentation. However, there are a number of factors involved in that. And so if you really want me in person, let's talk individually. So I portray Mary Todd Lincoln, and I have a number of programs, separate programs set at separate points in her life, and descriptions of those are found on my website. I also portray Laura Ingalls Wilder, and again, I have a number of different programs as her. My most recent one is Lessons Learned from the Hard Winter, and I'm pretty proud of that one. A lot of the lessons that Laura Ingalls Wilder learned during the isolation, the uncertainty, and the kind of social anxiety that she and her family experienced during the hard winter of 1880 to 81 were very, very relevant in a lot of the lockdown situations that we all encountered in the last 2 years. A lot of those, including clips of those programs, are on my website. I also portray Elizabeth Cady Stanton. I'm pretty proud of this presentation, set in 1866. And I portray Mary Harlan Lincoln, the daughter-in-law of Mary Todd Lincoln. And that program is set in 1865. My only fictional character is Irene Adler, the only woman to have outsmarted Sherlock Holmes. And that is a costumed portrayal. And I do have a lot of fun with that. My newest character is Charlotte Bronte, and I offer 2 different programs as Charlotte, one set in 1847 and one in 1854. And I am offering that if you book both of those programs within 4 weeks of each other, if you specifically hire me for both of those, I will give you a discount on those. I also, earlier this year, developed a new collective, and I launched that. That is called First Ladies Forum. And one of my co-founders, Judith Kellaora, you will learn, you will meet later on today. And we 4 ladies portray 4 different first ladies, and we offer this series of programs as a complete series. So you will get 4 programs, so 4 portrayals of Jackie Kennedy, Mary Todd Lincoln, Louisa Catherine Adams, and Dolly Madison. And you will get that virtually, and it'll just be one contract that you sign, one packet of information. And if anyone is interested in that series, please do let me know, and I'm happy to give you more information. As you can see, there is a website, historicvoices.info/First Ladies Forum with a numeral 1 ST, First Ladies Forum, for even more information, including clips of the programs. So the illustrated lectures that I offer, these are just kind of what they sound like. Lectures that I give, they are not costumed, but they cover a different little section of history, and I use historical images, as in some cases, as well as recent photos, clips, audio and video clips, in order to share that story. And so I do have a program just on Mary Lincoln's photograph album. It's very interesting indeed, the photos that she did and did not keep. A lecture on the little fashionista on the prairie, the clothing and fashion that Laura Ingalls Wilder put into her novels. Lighthouses of the Outer Banks and Lighthouses of Michigan and the Great Lakes. That's been very popular this summer. I know many of you public libraries are doing a program, the summer reading program with the theme Oceans of Possibilities. And so that has been very popular. Continuing on with lighthouses, earlier this year, I launched a lecture on female lighthouse keepers of America. I really do enjoy this. I enjoy bringing these often very overlooked stories to light. I have two more lectures here. The history of the Hershey Chocolate Company, quite the fan of Hershey chocolate here in our house. And every color has a story, history on the palette. So the history of certain colors, sometimes we can actually pinpoint a day and time or year when a color was invented. That's quite an interesting conversation. And two that are kind of focused on different holidays. A lot of folks around Halloween want a presentation on a look behind Orson Welles' War of the World broadcast, which of course was broadcast the day before Halloween in 1938, and the history and folklore of Santa Claus. That's of course very popular in December. So I'm going to take just an extra minute, not necessarily to talk about myself, but to talk about an idea that I really, really hope everyone here will consider. I really encourage you to consider lecture series. No matter your customers that you're with, again, whether you are in a public library or school setting or a museum setting, whatever your customers are, I hope you will consider offering a series of lectures. When you have a series that is focused around a certain theme, no matter the theme, you're always going to have a bit more possibility of more people attending them. If you offer virtual presentations, or for that matter, even in-person presentations, and each one is kind of a different theme, then you might not get the same people back. It might be difficult to keep the numbers high. The first few talks have quite a few numbers, and then they just start trailing off. If you have a series, again, around a certain theme, you're going to see a bit more retention. And so I hope you'll consider having a series. I am very happy to put on my library director hat and have a little brainstorming session, if you'd like, with you to think about either a topic for a series or different speakers on that topic. Here are some topics that I thought of, and I'm really not exaggerating. I thought of all of these topics in about 15 minutes. So here are just some lecture series ideas that you could have that could be helpful. And if any of these spark your interest, if you're like, oh yeah, tell me more about that, just type it in the chat and we can go over that later. I am in a position to recommend at least 3, sometimes more, presenters to match this topic that I've given you. So women authors of the 19th century, English women authors, untold stories of the Civil War, untold stories of the Revolutionary War, behind the scenes of Hollywood stories, stories behind American inventions, or just stories behind inventions, stories from the American frontier, a look behind Sherlock Holmes, food. I know that's really vague, and I'm sure that we could come up with a better topic or phrase, but just food. Lots of topics out there, lots of talks out there about food. The English pop culture invading America. It hasn't just happened recently. Music, old music, new music, good music, bad music. Transportation through the years. The stories behind the screen, so maybe the small screen. Just winter, just plain winter series, just Christmas lecture series, just American authors, women in STEM in history, American First Ladies. I mentioned the group that I helped found before, but there's others to mention as well. American pop culture, the women's rights movement, a focus just on Illinois history, and English authors, women in the Revolutionary War. These are just some series ideas that I am certain will be of interest to your customers. So, oh, I totally forgot. I had a whole nother thing, a whole nother slide. So sorry. Here are some more ideas. Mysteries in history. That's a lot of fun too. So, okay, I do think I am done with my ideas. Yep, I'm done. I know I was talking a lot. So we are going to have me stop talking for just a little bit. And let's see here. We are going to welcome Gary. After a rewarding career in advertising sales, Gary Wenstrup retired and developed courses on the Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, and Motown Records for the continuing education departments of College of DuPage and Oakton Community College. Gary now offers 18 different pop music history programs, from the Beatles to the Beach Boys to Billy Joel and Rod Stewart. Gary has lectured at over 90 Chicago area libraries, and his Beatles presentation was deemed the best of the best by the Library Administrators Conference of Northern Illinois. Thank you very much for being with us, Gary.
Thank you, Laura, for having me, and good afternoon, everyone. As Laura mentioned, I'm a pop music historian. You see my contact information there. I got my start in this world by working at the College of DuPage, which is just outside of Chicago. I'm an adjunct professor there in lifelong learning. I've been doing it for 5 years. And when I joined, I created my own classes. I created a class on the history of the Beatles, the history of Motown Records, and Simon and Garfunkel. And from there, I pivoted into lecturing and presenting at libraries. As Laura mentioned, I've done over 90 Chicago area libraries. I'm almost always invited back after one of my presentations. And my first presentation, The Beatles, Their History in 1 Hour, as Laura mentioned, was awarded one of the best of the best by the Northern Illinois Library Administrators. In terms of the programs I offer, the foundation is the Beatles. Half of the programs that I offer are the Beatles. I mentioned their history in 1 hour. I also look specifically at individual albums. So I cover, there's a presentation on Sgt. Pepper's, one on the Beatles' White Album, another on Abbey Road. When the Music Died, an overview of the Beatles breaking up has been popular. And then I also dive into the solo careers of both John Lennon and Paul McCartney. I develop classes again on Simon and Garfunkel, so I have a Simon and Garfunkel lecture as well as a Paul Simon solo lecture. Motown Records is very popular, as well as a new edition, Stevie Wonder. In terms of groups, I cover Fleetwood Mac and the band Chicago, as well as the Beach Boys. Some singer-songwriters, Carole King, James Taylor, and Carly Simon. And rock and rollers like Billy Joel and Rod Stewart. One of the things that makes my history of these different artists captivating is the fact that I'm not just a talking head. I include lots of music videos. So there's no way that you could talk about the Beatles without including this.
Tell you something I think you'll understand when I say that something. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand.
And in my Motown presentation, this particular video is very popular. Great chemistry. And I covered James Taylor. There's no way that I can't include You've Got a Friend, which is his only #1 hit.
When you're down and troubled and you need some love and care, and nothing, well, nothing is going right.
So plenty of music videos in my presentations, and also numerous interview clips to help move the story forward. Some are quite fun and off the cuff, like Rod Stewart and his famous hairstyle.
Let's talk about, can we talk about the hair? Because it's a work of art.
Yeah.
How long does it take to get that, to get the full Stewart?
The full Monty
The
Stewart.
full rod, yeah.
It's 10 minutes.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
No. Can I put my hands through it?
Yeah.
Can I just get the...
This is a very good
Right. No, it's not. I think it's a beautiful moment between two open-minded, broad-minded guys.
Generally speaking, the clips are sort of backstories to particular songs, but we make sure that we offer diversity. And then in the Fleetwood Mac presentation, when Fleetwood Mac is recording their most widely known album, Rumors, two of the members who have been living together actually break up, and Stevie Nicks explains that here.
Lindsay and I had a very bad fight right at the end of, right before we were getting ready to go back to LA. And I said, we're done. I think that this is over. I don't think that we can, all the king's horses and all the king's men can put this back together again. I think that we've gone just about as far as we can go. And we both know now that we're gonna, no matter what it takes, we're gonna keep Fleetwood Mac together. And our breaking up is not gonna break up this band. And I'm not gonna quit, and neither are you.
Again, many interview clips and music clips in my presentations. I think the presentations work well any time of the year, but you can certainly time them to particular anniversaries. For instance, January of 2023 will be the 50th anniversary of Carly Simon's You're So Vain hitting #1, so perfect timing for the James Taylor Carly Simon presentation. February, Black History Month, so perfect for Motown, Stevie Wonder. March, Women's History Month, that tees up Carole King and Fleetwood Mac. May is Jewish American Heritage Month, and Simon and Garfunkel have that heritage. And then November will be the 55th anniversary of the release of the Beatles' White Album. So it's just some different ideas to tie these presentations to a particular season. So that's an overview of what I present, again, pop music history.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Gary. Again, if anyone has any questions for Gary, you're welcome to just save them to the end. If you want to type them in right here, I'll save those. I did want to mention that I enjoyed Gary's presentation of the Beach Boys so much that I actually hired Gary to give his presentation of the Beach Boys for my father's birthday, who is such a fan, because we couldn't celebrate it in person. We had to celebrate his birthday, the whole family, on Zoom. So Gary was kind enough to do that just for my extended family. So Gary is a good sport. So great.
Laura,
Yeah.
Laura, I forgot to mention, in terms of my fee, the virtual fee is $250 per presentation.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for that reminder. And didn't even remember to ask you. Okay, a quick question for Gary. How far are you willing to travel? Someone here is located in Burlington, Iowa.
I'm open to conversation. I'm open to it.
Thank you, Gary. So Lois, do please write down Gary's information, and of course that'll be shared with you when I send out my email, and just send Gary an individual message and ask him about the extra travel fees that might be involved there. So thank you, Lois. Okay, and we are going to hear from another speaker now. So let's see here. Let me find my speaker. It'll be Cindy. We are going to hear from Cindy. Now, Cindy Wilson spent 4 decades in a high-tech career focused on databases, websites, and communications, while simultaneously becoming deeply immersed in various topics related to history and architecture. For instance, she leads tours at a Frank Lloyd Wright house in Iowa and is actively involved in the background at 2 Wright-related nonprofits. Another topic that deeply interests her is Laura Ingalls Wilder. After having helped several friends produce their own books, she, in an unexpected twist of fate, she found herself writing a book of her own. And I wish that I had, mine is actually across my room. It's over there, I can see it, but I can't lift it up to show you. So Cindy has a deep passion for history and sharing it with others, and that is what she will talk about today. Welcome, Cindy Wilson.
Well, thank you, Lauren. Hello, everybody. I'm going to start with a little bit of information about my book to provide context for the presentations that I give. Essentially, I wanted to know how the historic record compared to the events that took place in Laura Ingalls Wilder's novel, The Long Winter. That winter, of course, is known for being one of endless blizzards and hunger and cold, and where brand new towns in western Minnesota and eastern Dakota Territory were left in isolation because the trains couldn't get through. And many of those affected towns were just months old when the winter hit, and they were still getting established, getting to know each other, and they were still building their buildings. And these new towns were very reliant upon the trains for their goods, especially food and fuel. So when the snow blocked the trains, the new settlers were left without their expected source of resupplying. Looking at official history books, very little was found beyond a lot of hyperbole, like that the winter was one very long blizzard, for instance, and very little actual detail. But by digging into the newspaper record, I was able to find articles that showed how the winter unfolded for the residents week by week. And so far, I've developed 4 different presentations out of that material. The most popular one provides an overview of the hard winter, looking at several of the big topics. This presentation begins with an outline of the Wilder book, and then we look at the historic record. So starting with the weather to help set the stage for just how awful that winter really was. I then share some wonderful storm descriptions found in the newspapers. Then I share the struggles that the railroads had while trying to keep the trains moving, and have a nice collection of amazing historic photographs taken late in the winter that prove just how much snow had fallen. And after explaining why the lack of trains was so difficult on the towns, I use context and newspaper articles to expand on some of the topics like the food and the fuel and the newspapers and boosterism. This presentation is targeted at general audiences who are interested in historic events, frontier history, and of course, fans of the Little House books and Laura Ingalls Wilder. The second most popular presentation focuses in on the railroad companies and how they tried to keep the trains running. And I used the Big Cut west to Tracy as the focal point. And that Big Cut west to Tracy had played a big role in the novel, The Long Winter. For railroad audiences, I can minimize that Ingalls aspect to help, take away a little bit of the Ingalls part. Otherwise, this presentation begins with an introduction to Wilder's novel, as well as the weather to help set the stage. And then I provide background for the railroad lines and why the snow was piling up, despite there being plenty of snowplows and shovelers available. In addition to a drone video where the drone flies right down the tracks at the Tracy Cut, many historic photographs taken throughout the winter provide really wonderful visuals to supplement the information. This presentation targets audiences interested in the railroad history or who want a deeper look at this aspect of the hard winter. On many occasions, I've been approached primarily by females who were so excited to learn about the railroads when they had come in with zero or little interested in the railroads, and now they wanted to learn more. And that's a very gratifying response, as is the number of men who come up to me afterwards, very excited about the history behind it when they thought they were just being dragged to a presentation about Laura Ingalls Wilder. The third presentation is intended for audiences who want a little bit more about the literary side of things, focusing in on how Wilder created her novel, The Long Winter. I begin with a brief overview of the actual weather and the railroad's efforts. And then once that background is established, we walk through several examples and vignettes of how Wilder and her daughter Rose worked to convert Wilder's personal and family memories of the hard winter into her masterful book. Using letters between Wilder and Rose, as well as notes made during the editorial process, we'll observe the struggles and the decisions made. There are some truly, truly fascinating back and forth between the two women while they worked on that book. The author talk version is more informal and more of a personal walk through the material. Again, using visuals, I'll explain why I wrote the book and what inspired me. And I'll compare things from the historic record that were similar to the novel, as well as things that were wildly different. And there were plenty of things in both categories. Then we move on to some things that I personally found very fascinating during the research process. And I share some of those, including images of weekly newspaper editions that, due to the scarcity of paper to print on because the trains weren't getting through, the desperate newspaper publishers printed onto handkerchiefs or wallpaper to distribute to their equally desperate readers who would read anything they could get their hands on. The images shown here on this slide show two such examples. There's a handkerchief, which is printed on both sides, and after 141 years is still very clear to read. And the other sample is the front and back of a piece of wallpaper. Now, of course, the newspaper record is not an infallible source and is further hindered by the fact that these newspaper publishers were also tasked with boosting their town's value among all the other new towns who were all competing for new residents. Therefore, there were some very entertaining claims made by these editors during the hard winter, and I share some of those humorous examples as well. Each presentation takes about 30 to 35 minutes with time left over for questions and answers to fill a 60-minute slot. And each one of these has had really great reception and feedback. To see additional information about these presentations, as well as recommendations from other museums and libraries, you can go to thebeautifulsnow.com and look at the events page. My speaking fee is $125, whether in person or virtual. And if you're within a certain driving distance of my home around Mankato, Minnesota, I'm absolutely willing and would love to come and do an in-person event with mileage and travel covered mileage and hotel covered if needed. But I am sensitive to budget, so please do reach out and we can talk. So that's what I have, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Cindy. Again, Cindy brings up a good point that if anyone here listening would like a recommendation or a list of previous folks who have hired any one of our virtual presenters, all you have to do is just reach out and ask, and I'm sure each presenter would be very, very happy to share that with you. So we are going to hear next from Robert. So let's go ahead. And Robert, if you could start your video.
All right.
There we go. Yep. Now, Robert has brought one of his cats with him. I was very interested to see when everyone was signing up and registering for this a virtual presenter showcase, how many of you marked down that you are not a bot, but you do think that your cats think that you're one of them. And so that was fantastic. Thank you, everyone who has been accepted into their own cat herd. Glad to hear it. So Robert Kaplafka wins the prize for having the most varied topics that he covers in his presentations. He has performed for a variety of museums, libraries, and schools, and would like to let you know that if you happened to attend a Civil War reenactment in North Carolina 5 decades ago, and you stopped and asked a costumed woman, "Is that a real baby?" It was probably him as an infant. So welcome, Robert.
Thank you, Laura. I am joined today by a very feisty Mr. Darcy who wants to play. I'm gonna put you down, buddy. Say goodbye, Darcy. And I am going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. I'm Robert Kaplafka, and thank you for joining us. Thank you, Laura, for having me as part of your virtual presenters showcase. Bicycles, guitars, and abolitionists. What do they have in common? Well, not a whole lot, except me. These are the main subjects that I cover in the presentations that I'm offering. First off, my bicycle maintenance and safety programs. Waking up your bike for spring, keeping your bike rolling for summer, and putting your bike to bed for winter. In these programs, I go over what you need to do to make sure your bike is safe and reliable. I tailor the programs to fit the time of year, for the beginning of the riding season, for the middle of the riding season, and at the end of the riding season. For this program, I took this 1966 Murray Le Mans from this sorry, neglected, abandoned state, tore it completely down, cleaned everything up, replaced all the missing and worn out parts, and got it ready to roll. I go over each step that it took to get the bike into this safe and reliable condition. I also go over more modern bicycles and explain that the same principles apply to brand new bicycles. I demonstrate the proper procedures and explain any specialty tools that might be needed to work on bicycles. My bicycle maintenance programs are available right now. I've been doing these programs for several years now, and I am constantly trying to improve them. Get a bicycle. You will not regret it if you live. That's from Mark Twain's book, Taming the Bicycle. If you love Mark Twain or bicycles, you should read this book. It's a really great one. History of the bicycle, with a focus on Illinois. Why a focus on Illinois? Well, that's where I live. And sorry to our friends who are joining us from outside Illinois, but Illinois was key to a great many critical developments of the modern bicycle. Most people will think of the Schwinn Company of Chicago when thinking about bicycles. The coaster brake bike was invented by the Stover Company of Freeport, Illinois. And the city of Peoria, where I now live, was very influential to the acceptance of the early bicycle. Yes, there were many people who believed that the bicycle was some sort of demon spawn that would lead the youth of our nation into moral bankruptcy. Peoria was a leader in dispelling these false ideas and showing the world the great utility and recreational potential that the bicycle had. But you can't talk about the history of the bicycle without mentioning those geniuses from Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright. And the history of the bicycle will take you all around the nation and all around the world. From the German Laufmaschine to the French velocipede, from the very unsafe British sort of ordinary, also known as the high wheeler or penny farthing, to this amazing piece of world history, to this quote unquote safety bike that the British mounted a machine gun onto. The bicycle is quite probably the most important and influential invention of the 19th century. My history of the bicycle program will be available November 1st. I'm taking bookings now. And actually, we're heading up to Freeport this weekend to do some research about that world's first coaster brake bike, the Stover Phoenix. Next program I want to tell you about, how a guitar works, with a brief history of the Spanish guitar. Why the Spanish guitar? Well, let's take a quick look at a couple of Leo Fender's creations. This is an early 1950s Fender Studio Deluxe lap steel or Hawaiian guitar. This is a G&L Skyhawk, one of the last guitars Leo designed and built. When he first started selling these solid body Broadcaster, Telecaster, and Stratocaster guitars, they were referred to as electric Spanish guitars in order to differentiate them from Leo's earlier lap steel guitars. This tradition of calling even electric guitars Spanish guitars stuck around for quite a long time. And there are also many things that have been carried over from the earliest Spanish guitars straight through to today's instruments. A brief history, because many doctoral dissertations have been written on this subject. And who has the time for that when you're not going for your PhD in music history? From the vahuela to the classical guitar, to modern solid body electrics like this Les Paul, I go over in simple terms how they function and what they have in common. For this presentation, I will be completing this project that I actually began working on with my father before he passed away, and showing all the tricky little bits that make an electric guitar work. I'm going to include as many pictures of pretty guitars as I possibly can, because guitar people love seeing them. My How a Guitar Works program will be available November 1st also, and I am taking bookings now. And my favorite presentation to share is of one of my ancestors, William Irving Kirk. He was an abolitionist preacher in North Carolina. I'm incredibly proud of him, and I am grateful for the influence he had on the following generations of my family. A clip of me performing as William Irving Kirk is available from last year's showcase. And if Laura can put that link to last year's showcase in the chat, and you can check it out there. I will now make my exit. Please type any questions you have into the chat or email me anything you might have. I want to thank you very much for joining us for the Virtual Presenter Showcase, and thank you for taking a few minutes to listen to me.
You are very welcome, Robert. Would you like to remind everyone what your fee schedule is?
Oh gosh, $200 per virtual presentation, depending on the, also if in-person presentations, there would of course be travel expenses located in Central Illinois. So if anybody wants me to appear in person, contact me and we will sort out what that's going to cost, because the travel expenses actually can get quite high.
Okay, that sounds really good. Thank you very much, Robert, and thank you for having a brief visit with Mr. Darcy. That's always good.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
So we are going to hear from George next. Let's see here. So George Pettigrew is the great-grandson of Private Isaac Johnson, who enlisted in the U.S. Army on May 6, 1867. Serving in the 38th and 24th Infantry Regiments and the 9th Cavalry Regiment. He was an original Buffalo Soldier on the Western frontier. George is a certified oral and certified written storyteller and is an artist teacher at the Woodneath Story Center, specializing in the Buffalo Soldiers and the historic intersections between African Americans and Africans in the military on the North American continent. George is a presenting member of the Missouri Humanities Council Speakers Bureau and the executive vice president of the Alexander Madison chapter of Kansas City Buffalo Soldiers, the first chapter in the world. George is co-chairman of the 9th and 10th Horse Cavalry Association Fort Leavenworth, Kansas Museum Committee in a unique public-private partnership with the U.S. Army to fund, construct, and install a new museum on federal land outside the existing gates and fence line for greater public access. We are very happy to have George join us today.
Thank you very much, Laura. If schools had taught everything, I'd have nothing to say. The opportunity to tell the stories that are parallel to the stories we all are familiar with is where I find audience acceptance the greatest. We know about all of the figures of the Old West, but we have heard very little, if any at all, about the companion stories that included the Buffalo Soldiers. The most popular questions are things like, why are they called Buffalo Soldiers? And then there's so many amazing facts that have just been overlooked or overshadowed. The purpose in doing all of it is to show that America is a fabric and that all people have a part in that fabric, and is bringing ownership of our country to all of us. And I think through understanding of the contributions of different groups of people, it builds a stronger, better America. The programs that I do are in costume. And I do them that way because it is a draw. I started doing costume presentations in 2017. And since then, some of the things that Laura mentioned has come about because of my involvement in being a storyteller, which I enjoy immensely. The programs that I talk about as a historian and as an oral historian, I focus on Africans and African Americans and the parallel and intersection of the U.S. military in North America. Now, some of the stories go back a little bit outside of the country because they're relevant to what happened here. But I talk about some of the offerings would include the very first free Black, legally sanctioned settlement in North America. And it goes all the way through to World War I, World War II, and to the Korean War, when the Buffalo Soldiers actually were disbanded because the military became integrated in 1952. So it is primarily about the military, principally the United States Army. And it carries the stories of many, many people. Now, I do solo and also do in tandem with presenters that are also a part of the troupe. And we do this for not only the state of Missouri, but for the National Park Service, museums, corporations, traveling everywhere from Florida to Arizona, and doing both virtual and in person. Personally, I enjoy the energy of in person, but understanding the logistics and the cost benefits of having virtual as part of our toolkit, it does provide the opportunity for greater reach to an audience in a way that is affordable. One key part of the presentations I make is that we always focus, and I focus, on geolocal history that involves the Buffalo Soldiers. And surprisingly, you'll find that everywhere because Buffalo Soldiers arrived from New York down to Florida and the Carolinas and everywhere that you could possibly think of. But of course, back then, once you cross the Mississippi River into Kansas, it left the United States. Well, the stories go in all types of situations, including, I must say, the one about Kathy Williams, a woman that is certified to have been a Buffalo Soldier. She pretended to be a man successfully for 22 months in the infantry and marched about 1,000 miles with a troop and never was discovered. Her story is a powerful story. But then there are stories also, the ones I tell about my great-grandfather are still works in progress because the records are very, very hard to actually break down and find in between the differing stories where the truth may lie. Records weren't always kept. It is, though, something that we enjoy doing. As far as fees are concerned, actually, I'd have to say it's need-based. For schools, don't charge. And for organizations, it depends. I do travel, I don't mind, and I always seek the most effective and most economical way to keep the cost down. For example, if it's within driving distance and it's a comfortable driving distance, that is a preference. And I do examine trains and airplanes for each and every performance to find out what is the most economical means. And then, of course, my fee is $350 a day in person, $250 a day is virtual. In person, though, this is what you are most likely. Oh, this is not working well for me, is it? Wow. So sorry about that. Don't let me do that. It was there, now it's not. I apologize for that. But it is something that we enjoy doing. I have standing contracts with the state of Missouri, with library associations. I have presented to the Missouri Library Association as at the National Convention and other events like that. The one thing that I can say is that we do not do a slide presentation because in uniform, that is the draw, and it keeps people engaged because not only does it tell the story, it demonstrates the equipment, how they dressed, what they did, even down to the matter of which horses were ridden in which company of the infantry, because people rarely know that these things really matter. We talk about folks that you would know very well. We talk about Kip Carson. We talk about Buffalo Wild Bill Hickok, Buffalo Bill, and even more modern folks like Jackie Robinson, who was a Buffalo Soldier. So it's a program that is really not about Black history whatsoever. It is about Black participation in American history. So I welcome all inquiries and would love to come and see you or to see you virtually. But thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, George. So I have put George's email address and his organization website there in the chat. And so you are definitely able to contact George through one of those means. Now, our next, let's see here, our next presenter could not be with us at this moment today. So I am going to tell you about Sarah and her portrayal. So give me a moment. Here we go. You are going to see this. Sarah Walsh holds degrees in library science and education, but came to living history through theater. In Seattle in 2015, she played Abigail Adams in a production of 1776 that was cast entirely with women and non-binary actors. A year later, Sarah was invited to start studying Abigail's life in earnest and portray her at 18th century events and reenactments throughout the West Coast and Southwest. Having learned machine sewing from her mother at age 10, Sarah is now building her historical hand sewing skills and is in the process of creating a wardrobe for different periods in Abigail's life. Sarah's daughter, Ziva, has been immersed in 18th century reenacting since she was 3. I'm sure Ziva and Robert could have a lot to talk about, and sometimes portrays Nabby, the Adams' eldest child. Sarah and her family now live in the DC area, where this country's history is tangible and accessible in so many ways, to be celebrated, wrestled with, and confronted head-on. And I would like to share this clip of Sarah's presentation as Abigail Adams.
He purchased a home in Queen Street, but we were not to be settled there for very long. The stirrings of revolution came to a crisis on the night of December 1773, when the Sons of Liberty made their sentiments about the Townshend Acts abundantly clear, and threw the entire cargo of tea from several ships into the harbor. We removed again to Braintree soon after. By that time, we were near daily anticipating the King's troops taking Boston by force. When that did come to pass, being away in the country, we were greatly afeard for our property in town, peculiarly John's books, which were all under the care of his clerks at his law office. There was a great deal of concern for the President of Congress, Mr. John Hancock's home and furniture, which had been seized to be occupied by a general of the King's army. The family had deserted it months before, thank heaven, and were not in the way to be injured or opportuned. We had hoped that our final removal from town would be bringing us to comparative peace and tranquility. But I hear the cannon at every hour of night and day, shuddering in my very bones. It brings to mind the morning, almost 1 year ago, that John Quincy and I climbed up to the top of Penn's Hill near our farm and watched the Battle of Breed's Hill unfold. Although my husband is not fighting on the streets and battlefields alongside our commander-in-chief, I am in perpetual fear for John's life nonetheless. The meetings of the Congress, though conducted as they are by gentlemen who have a deep and abiding respect for their duty and responsibility to the colonies they represent, are themselves acts of rebellion. Should there be an occupation of Philadelphia, he and the other gentlemen of the Congress risk the danger of discovery, capture, and being hanged for treason. As John's engagement in politics has increased, I have found myself ever more strongly convinced that we ladies are best employed in the domestic sphere. I am determined to be a dependable, steady friend who supports and champions her husband's endeavors and makes his mind easy about all home concerns. But why should that exclude us from being educated or from comprehending the political maneuvers that men direct? We have as much right as they to be informed of the resolutions being taken and carried out, and to participate in determining who will speak and act in our behalf. There are women who own property in Boston, yet they are not permitted to vote when there is an election. However, I could not conceive of putting myself forward to debate and argue in favor of this in the public square. In March of this year, caught up as I was by John's own fervor and impatience with the languor and hesitancy of the Congress to act in a decisive manner, I shared my convictions on this matter with him in a letter. I wrote, I feel a gaiety de cœur to which before I was a stranger. I think the sun looks brighter, the birds sing more melodiously, and nature puts on a more cheerful countenance. We feel a temporary peace, and the poor fugitives are returning to the deserted habitations. Though we felicitate ourselves, we sympathize with those who are trembling lest the lot of Boston should be theirs. But they cannot be in similar circumstances unless pusillanimity and cowardice should take possession of them. They have time and warning given them to see the evil and shun it. I long to hear that you have declared an independency. And by the way, in the new code of laws, which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire that you would remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation. That your sex are naturally tyrannical is a truth so thoroughly established as to admit of no dispute. But such of you as wish to be happy willingly give up the harsh title of master for the more tender and endearing one of friend. Why then not put it out of the power of the vicious and the lawless to use us with cruelty and indignity with impunity? Men of sense in all ages abhor these customs which treat us only as the vassals of your sex. Regard us then as beings placed by Providence under your protection, and in imitation of the Supreme Being, make use of that power only for our happiness. Believing that I held some degree of sway with him, and he with the Congress, I trusted that he would propose the necessary laws without reference to me. Should not this exhortation have moved him to such a degree as to make him hate the very thought of establishing a new nation upon such unequal terms? I had this reply from John. Your description of your own gaiety de cœur charms me. Thanks be to God you have just cause to rejoice, and may the bright prospect be obscured by no cloud. As to declarations of independency, be patient. Read our privateering laws and our commercial laws. What signifies a word? As to your extraordinary code of laws, I cannot but laugh. We have been told that our struggle has loosened the bands of government everywhere, that children and apprentices were disobedient, that schools and colleges were grown turbulent, that Indians slighted their guardians and Negroes grew insolent to their masters. But your letter was the first intimation that another tribe, more numerous and powerful than all the rest, were grown discontented. This is rather too coarse a compliment, but you are so saucy, I won't blot it out. Depend upon it.
Well, that starts an interesting conversation, I'm sure, between Abigail and John Adams. So, folks, let's see here. That was from Sarah Walsh, and again, she could not be here this afternoon, but I would like to share with you in the chat box here. Let's see here. Her website, which is abigailadams.info. And you can contact Sarah through that website. Her presentations are varied. And they offer kind of a set presentation on Abigail's life. She does like to tailor them to the specific time period of the year. So if you'd like to book her in the, November and Christmas, she might discuss, winter things in from that time, from the late 18th century. And she can also talk about 18th century women's clothing, if that is something that your audience members will enjoy as well. And if you ask her, she might possibly arrange for a visit by young Nabby Adams, portrayed by her daughter Ziva. Sarah asks for $200 for a Zoom presentation, and an in-person presentation is also $200 plus travel fees. And she is based in Maryland. So again, if you do have more direct questions for Sarah, please do contact her through the website, abigailadams.info, and I've put it there in the chat. So, okay, we are going to hear from our last presenter today. Let's see here. Sorry, everyone, about the spotlight thing. Always fun to try to host a Zoom program with many moving parts. So we are going to hear from the founder of History at Play, Judith Calaora. Judith is a professional educator and living historian. She graduated from Syracuse University, magna cum laude, and holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Acting, along with a Bachelor of Arts in Spanish Literature, Language, and Culture. She completed the Globe Education Program of Shakespeare's Globe Theatre in London. Now, Judith founded History at Play, LLC in 2010 to chronicle the lives of influential and often forgotten figures. She is also the recipient of the 2021 Women in the Arts Award, presented by the Daughters of the American Revolution. Judith researches, writes, produces, and performs the production, along with employing guest artists globally. Judith joined me earlier this year in launching First Ladies Forum, and that link I already put in the chat. And today we welcome History at Play, presenting a segment from their presentation, I Now Pronounce You Lucy Stone.
I had not been more than 20 miles from my father's farm in West Brookfield, Massachusetts, and now I was to travel by stagecoach and by steam train. And all the while, all I could think was what it would be like to matriculate at a real college, a college where women could attend. The only college in all of the United States of America where both women and Negroes could matriculate together. And after weeks and weeks in travel, finally I arrived. Oberlin College in Oberlin, Ohio. And my favorite class? It was rhetoric. However, as it is illegal for women to speak in public, we were to learn by watching the men speak. I had never been told and taught more explicitly that a woman should be seen and not heard than I was during my time at Oberlin College. But my best friend Nettie and I dared otherwise. Nettie, as I call her, Antoinette Brown Blackwell. She intended to enter the realm of public speaking as a pastor. I intend to enter the realm of public speaking as a lecturer. We approached our rhetoric professor, a liberal man, a Southerner. He had released his Negroes long before it was popular to do so. Professor, will you allow Nettie and I to debate one another? For our classmates only. No one else need know. Yes. He said yes. And I will never forget the day of that discourse. The lecture hall was filled. There was not an inch of space where a face was not poking out like a flower amongst the crowd. I told Nettie we should have charged admission. And then, for the first time in all of my life, I stood before the lectern and I spoke in public. And I knew in that moment I was born to be a public speaker. Our professor offered us criticisms. We never had spoken in public before. There was little to compliment, yet he was honest. He was kind. Yet not all approved of our discourse. Nettie and I were chastised. We were punished. We were prohibited to ever speak again in public with threat of expulsion from Oberlin College. And who do you think it was, my friends, sisters, and brothers, who punished us so? I ask you, and I can see you in there if you put your ideas into the little magical box in the bottom of your magic screen. I'll tell you if you're correct or not. Who do you think it was who punished us so? Do you think it was the students? No, of course not. Do you think it was the faculty? No. It was the faculty wives, the women. So we so wish to uplift. They are our greatest oppressors, holding us, barring us down. And so, like witches, we women of Oberlin College set out to the woods of Ohio. I would not graduate with a reputation of a thorough collegiate course, yet have no rhetorical training, and neither would my classmates. There, in the middle of the night, in the woods of Oberlin, Ohio, we posted sentries at the perimeters, and there we women practiced debating one another. For there was not a single one of us women who could successfully state a question nor argue it in successful debate until we had those clandestine meetings. By 1847, the year of my commencement, my fellow students had nominated me to be the commencement speaker for the Oberlin graduating class of 1847, and then the faculty told me that I could write the commencement speech, but I could not read it. This is not the policy with male commencement speakers. No deed of mine should ever look toward the support of such a principle, nor to its toleration. I refused the honor to write the commencement speech for the Oberlin graduating class, and each and every one of my classmates, both male and female, refused the honor as well. I may not be the commencement speaker of the Oberlin College graduating class of 1847, yet I am the very first woman from all of Massachusetts to earn a college degree. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Judith Kalaora, and I am, as Laura very kindly and very eloquently stated, the Artistic Director of History at Play. All of our programs are based on primary source documentation. They include actual quotes. You actually heard multiple quotes from Lucy Stone, taken from her life and her time at Oberlin. We have 13 performances in our repertoire at present. We do have a program manual that I will put in the chat box as well. Meanwhile, I know that Laura may have also given you a link for our website. We also have a link tree, which is actually the most accurate way that you can get all of our information in one place. You'll have to excuse me, I turned the AC off in my very old studio, so I am, after just that little bit of performing, slightly drenched. I am Boston based. We are in an extreme heat wave right now. Most of our programs are solo programs, but we do offer ensemble programs as well, some of which can be done virtually. Before COVID, I traveled all over the United States. I was in an airplane on a weekly basis, and I'd like to return to that as well. But without being said, obviously, programs that require flight generally can be more expensive. Some of our programs, including I Now Pronounce You Lucy Stone, which you just saw, can be flown very easily. The set is often much more condensed than what we find in our virtual programs, which we create a whole world every time we do a virtual program that's completely different from what you're seeing right now, and it always looks very immaculate and filled with appropriate props and costume pieces. But some of our programs are larger, so they would need to be shipped or driven. But for virtual programs, we offer every single program in our repertoire except currently Diana of Love, which is our new program that we debuted in June, and it is a very big program. It features musical artists, it features dance, it features visual art. So it is just too large to be done in a studio space, but we are hoping to record a high quality recording and offer that recording as a video rental. As Laura was mentioning, we will offer the opportunity for folks to rent our performances for 48 hours up to a week. So regarding pricing, everything is very, very independent when it comes to our pricing and our clientele. I recommend multiple libraries and activities coordinators if you work anywhere that you can join up with other venues in your community, collaborate together, share the expense. Our programs range in pricing, but I will say that anyone who's joined us today on the virtual showcase, just tell the word showcase to me either in an email or by phone, and I'll automatically offer 15% off our regular rates. Additionally, if you book 2 or more programs to occur within a 6-month time period, you'll get an additional 10% off the total booking. Our programs do start at $500. I have 17 years of experience in this field, and I began performing when I was 8. So that is all taken into account, along with the fact that I've researched and written all of these programs and procured all of these props. So please do ask any questions that you have, and I do look forward to making history with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Wow, that was very moving, and I'm glad you shared that presentation with us today. Just really just a little portion of the presentation.
Can I ask one huge favor? I almost forgot.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the end of each program that we do, virtual program, we always ask a trivia question and we give out a trivia prize. And I was hoping that, Laura, you might let me do that today as well.
That would be just fine. That is a great idea.
So for today, our programs, whatever we do, we usually have a prize that's indicative of that time period. But today, since it's just a general showcase, the winner of this prize will receive various sort of swag from our company, including our program manual, which has all of our programs in it, details including running time. You'll receive a History at Play sticker. Dun, 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 dun. You'll also receive a History at Play pen and other information for how to contact us, marketing materials, so on and so forth. Whenever we do a program, you get a full press pack. You do not have to do any work at all to promote our programs. You get a press release template, you get an editable flyer that can be personalized for your venue, you get publicity stills, you get logos, you get everything all in one Google Drive, and we help you as much as you need. So that's also something to take into consideration when booking with History at Play. It's all done for you. So our trivia question today, this is fast fingers, folks, so please make sure you you have your chat box open. Trivia question today is, what was the name of Lucy Stone's friend who she was lecturing with? Somebody already got it. And do you know what her full name was, Erin? By chance? Or Dawn? I think Dawn got it even first.
Yeah, you've got some very fast fingers, very good listeners out there. Very good.
We'll go with Dawn. Dawn got Nettie, and her full name is Antoinette Brown Blackwell. She goes on to become the first female ordained minister in the United States of America. So Dawn, if you want to either privately message me or email in judith@historyatplay.com with your postal address, I will get this information in the mail for you ASAP. Thank you again so very much, Laura, and to all the folks who've joined us today.
Thanks for participating. I'm so glad that that we did have a good participation, and there's Judith's email address right there. So those are all of our presenters. And so do apologize for if some of you couldn't see Sarah's video too well, because I was trying to share a screen and George was still trying, you know, on the screen. So if you didn't see that too well, please accept my apology. And I will make sure that it is Sarah's clip that she provided to us, that there is a better quality version of that when I send out the link to this entire recording. So do apologize for that, but thank you for your patience. If anyone has any questions for any of our speakers today, please put them into the chat. We're going to take just a few minutes and answer any questions that you have. I've already been reminded that starting off our group of speakers, I did not share my price structure. And so I asked $250 for a virtual program. If you are a small organization or an organization who just plain doesn't want to host the Zoom, I will host it for you for an extra $25. And if anyone wants an in-person presentation, that's $400 from me, and travel fees are on top of that as well. So that's my fee structure. You are very welcome, Lisa. I see some thank yous for Lisa. And for anyone who would like to buy me a cup of tea, Jan, you said earlier that you want to buy me a cup of tea. There you go. There's my coffee page, coffee.com, buy me a cup of tea or coffee. And so just click on that and that would be fine. So Marlis has a good question. Cindy, if you want to unmute yourself and share your fees again, please.
My speaking fee is $125. And depending on location, I also ask mileage, and then either hotel or, depending on weather and situation, camping. I can camp too. That's a lot less expensive these days than even the low-end hotel. So
thank you, Cindy. And that's very generous of you to offer to camp. I'll tell you folks right now, Mrs. Lincoln, she doesn't camp. So if you want, you know, if you want to travel on a visit from Mrs. Lincoln or Irene Adler for that matter, yeah, they don't camp. So Cindy is very generous indeed. So, okay, you are, let's see, a lot of thank yous. You are very welcome, folks. Thank you for staying with us. I know it's been a little longer than an hour, but I did tell everyone to set aside 90 minutes. We'll just take a few more minutes here to answer some questions. Let's see. And some folks are saying, looking forward to working with these professionals. So I'm really happy. And a question, what's George's last name? George's last name is Pettigrew. And so you can find out his information. This is his organization's website. This is George's organization's website. And find out more information about his organization and George from that website. So there you go. Let's see. I really hope that all of you folks out there will consider hiring one or more of these presenters, and also think about my idea that I shared earlier, a series of lectures on almost any topic under the sun. I'm happy to, like I said, spitball some ideas with you if you'd like. And I'm just so interested in sharing history. And George, could you type your name into the chat box? Some
Yes.
people go right ahead.
Okay.
Oh, and some folks enjoyed it from the a library in Kansas. Janet, I apologize. I'm not going to try to pronounce your library's name because I bet I will say it wrong. George Pettigrew. Thank you, George. Didn't want to misspell that. Any other questions from the attendees? Just scroll up if you need anyone's contact information. If you want to see it again, I'll put some more links in the chat box. Any last questions? Anything that our presenters want to add that you didn't get a chance
I would
to?
like to, because I realize I overlooked the most important thing. The programs that I produce and the ones that I do virtually and in person are slave to soldier. I don't know how I forgot to mention that, but they're all slave to soldier, telling what is the greatest human experiment in American history, going from being a non-person and property to being a soldier and an authority for the United States government.
Thank you, George. Yes, that's a great name. And if anyone is interested in seeing, as I mentioned before, so many of us who are giving virtual presentations, you have the opportunity to see the presentation, kind of preview it. If you're still considering if it's going to be a good fit for your organization, George and his colleagues are going to give his presentation for my library, actually. And so that's more information is available on dunlaplibrary.org, and you can find event and registration information there. And that's later this month. And a question for you, George. Could you remind everyone what your fee is, please?
My fee in person is $350, and that is per event. If the events happen to run, if more than one organization wants to get together, which is happening at Western Illinois University, I will stay over and accommodate that. But the fee is $350 per event. And of course, as I said before, which is very important in everyone's interest, that I do everything I can to facilitate the best possible price as far as the expenses are concerned.
George, we have one question for you and then a question for Gary when we're done. So do you have anything to share briefly about any Buffalo Soldiers in Illinois? Do they have any connection to the state of Illinois?
Oh, yes. Illinois was a place that they had people that were running from Illinois. Actually.
Oh, well, isn't that not lovely?
Because, you see, it was in St. Louis, and they would just go down the river. And once they went down the river, if they could make it to Jefferson Barracks, which is really in St. Louis now, but then it was just outside St. Louis. Once they got there, then they were able to enlist. And seeing that they only had a limited number of slots available, especially during an economic and social time when hardly anybody could find a job. And to have those jobs for former slaves, like my great-grandfather, who could then neither read nor write, it was a dream come true to be able to get that far. Many people did not, but it was an opportunity that America never offered before, because theretofore the state militias took care of the brunt of war, and once the war's over, go home. And if you're a slave, go back where you came from for sure. But this gave them an opportunity, and most importantly, it gave them the ability to try their best. And this is the reason they did it. They did their best to prove their worth as a citizen in the country in which they were born.
A wonderful message. Thank you, George. Our last question is going to go to Gary. Let's see here. Let's get you on the screen, Gary. The question for Gary is, could you just remind us, do you offer virtual or both virtual and in person, depending on the location?
I offer both virtual and in person.
Thank you, Gary. So, yep, he'll be, and Gary is located in the greater Chicagoland area, for those who are interested. So once again, thank you everyone for attending. And yes, the last question is, will we have the recording by week's end? Yes, indeed. I sincerely hope by the end of tomorrow. It might be the beginning of Thursday, but yes, by the week's end. Thank you, Donna. So glad to see some of you here. You are very welcome, everyone. And there you go. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for being here.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Laura. Bye.
Bye.